Welcome back to Why Killers Kill. Today, we're journeying to the quiet, isolated farmlands of Plainfield, Wisconsin, to uncover the story of a man whose name is synonymous with American horror, Ed Gein.
He wasn't a prolific serial killer in terms of numbers, Dan, but the nature of his crimes left a scar on the public psyche that endures to this day.
Exactly. To understand the Butcher of Plainfield, we have to start with the person who created him, his mother, Augusta Gein.
She was a force of nature, and not in a good way. Augusta was a fervent, domineering religious zealot who ruled the Gein household with an iron fist.
His father, George, was an alcoholic and frequently unemployed. He was often abusive towards his sons, Ed and his older brother Henry.
But Augusta was the true source of the family's toxicity. She preached constantly about the inherent evil of the world, especially the sinfulness of women, whom she called instruments of the devil.
In 1915, to shield her boys from these perceived evils, she moved the family to a remote 155-acre farm. This was intentional isolation.
And it worked. The boys had almost no contact with outsiders. Ed was shy, had a lazy eye and a speech impediment, and was relentlessly bullied at school.
He had these strange mannerisms, like laughing randomly at his own private jokes. Yet he was a decent student, especially in reading.
Any attempt he made to have friends was crushed by Augusta. She called her sons failures to ensure they remained dependent on her.
There were some deeply disturbing red flags early on. Around age 7, he witnessed his parents slaughtering a hog and had his first sexual arousal experience.
That's a terrifying association to form in a young mind, linking violence, death, and arousal. It's a textbook recipe for disaster.
Later, when she caught him masturbating, Augusta screamed at him that his genitals were the curse of man and made both her sons promise to remain virgins.
So he was taught that women were evil, but his mother was the exception, and his own sexuality was a curse. He adored the very person who was so profoundly abusing him.
This created an obsessive, deeply unhealthy attachment. Ed idolized his mother, and that powerful, twisted bond is the absolute key to this entire case.
The early life section really sets the stage. The isolation, the psychological and religious abuse from Augusta, and the complete lack of a healthy emotional outlet. It's all there.
It's a chilling foundation. Now, let's look at the psychological damage this caused. Gein was later diagnosed with schizophrenia and as a sexual psychopath.
What did sexual psychopath mean in that context? It sounds like a very broad, almost archaic term.
It was. It was used to describe individuals with deviant sexual behaviors and fantasies, which Gein clearly had. But the core of his profile was an extreme, abnormal maternal fixation.
His entire identity was wrapped up in Augusta. He had no self of his own, so all his desires, fears, and thoughts were filtered through her.
Psychiatrists believed he was in a constant state of conflict. He loved his mother, but he also likely harbored an intense, repressed hatred for her because of the abuse.
That's a classic Freudian scenario. The desire for the mother, coupled with the desire to destroy her. In Gein's case, it seems he tried to resolve it by becoming her.
He also experienced daze-like states and significant memory lapses, which aligns with the schizophrenia diagnosis. He would claim not to remember entire evenings spent in graveyards.
Was that genuine dissociation, or was he trying to distance himself from the horror of his own actions? Maybe both.
It's hard to say definitively, but experts agree his psychosis was deeply rooted in his inability to separate his identity from Augusta's.
He couldn't have a relationship with any other woman because his mother had poisoned that well completely. So he was trapped.
Trapped is the perfect word. He was emotionally and psychologically a child, even in his 40s and 50s.
And his world was about to get even smaller. This is where things begin to truly unravel.
The psychological profile is clear. A man broken by his mother, suffering from severe mental illness, and completely detached from normal human connection.
It's a portrait of a mind on the brink of collapse. All it needed was one final push.
Let's talk about those turning points. The first major event was the death of his father, George, in 1940 from heart failure.
Augusta's reaction was chilling. She essentially said he was weak and had gone to hell. No grief, just contempt.
This left Ed and his brother Henry alone with her. The brothers were known as reliable handymen, and Ed even babysat for neighbors.
But Henry was starting to pull away. He grew concerned about Ed's unhealthy attachment to their mother, and even started criticizing her openly.
That was a direct threat to the toxic dynamic Augusta had built. Henry was even planning to move out with a woman he was dating.
And then came the fire. On May 16, 1944, a marsh fire on their property got out of control.
Ed reported Henry missing, but when the search party arrived, Ed was able to lead them directly to Henry's body, which was lying face down.
Here's the strange part. The body was unburned, but Henry had bruises on his head. The official cause of death was asphyxiation, and no autopsy was performed.
Many biographers suspect Ed killed his brother. It was a Cain and Abel scenario to remove the one person who challenged his devotion to their mother.
It was never investigated, but it seems horrifyingly plausible. He eliminated his only rival for Augusta's world.
Shortly after Henry's death, Augusta had a stroke, leaving her partially paralyzed. Ed became her sole devoted caretaker.
And then, on December 29, 1945, Augusta died. For Ed, his entire world ended.
He was devastated. He later described her as his only friend and one true love. He was now utterly alone on that isolated farm.
This was the final turning point. The anchor was gone, and he was completely adrift in his psychosis.
He boarded up his mother's rooms, preserving them as a shrine, while the rest of the house fell into squalor. He began obsessively reading about anatomy, cannibals, and Nazi atrocities.
Specifically, stories about Ilse Koch, the bitch of Buchenwald, who allegedly made lampshades from human skin. That's a terrifying detail.
This is where his obsessions turned into action. The path to violence was paved by death, isolation, and a complete break from reality.
The loss of his mother didn't free him. It just allowed the darkest parts of her influence to take over completely.
The path to violence was a slow burn, but Augusta's death lit the final fuse. He was now free to act on his darkest impulses.
Free and utterly lost. Let's get into the crimes themselves. It started not with murder, but with grave robbing.
Correct. Between 1947 and 1952, Gein confessed to making around 40 nighttime visits to 3 local graveyards. He would read the obituaries to find his targets.
And who was he targeting?
recently buried middle-aged women who he thought resembled his mother. He said he would go into a daze-like state and often came home empty-handed.
But on at least 9 occasions, he wasn't empty-handed. He exhumed the bodies, took them home, and began his projects.
He tanned their skins to make various items. He denied having sexual contact with the corpses, claiming the smell was too bad, though his motives were clearly psychosexual.
He was trying to physically possess them, to use their bodies to create a substitute for the mother he lost.
After a few years, grave robbing was no longer enough. On December 8, 1954, he murdered 51-year-old tavern owner Mary Hogan.
She also resembled Augusta. The pattern is undeniable. How did he kill her?
He shot her with a .22 caliber rifle, dragged her body out of the tavern, and took her home. Her disappearance baffled the community.
Locals apparently joked that she was over at Ed's place, which is just bone-chilling in hindsight. Nobody actually suspected the quiet, odd handyman.
His second and last confirmed murder occurred on November 16, 1957. The victim was Bernice Warden, the 58-year-old owner of the town's hardware store.
Another middle-aged woman who resembled his mother. He was escalating, becoming bolder.
He went into her store, supposedly to buy antifreeze, and shot her with a .22 rifle. He then used the store's truck to take her body back to his farm.
But this time he made a mistake. A fatal one for him.
He left behind a sales receipt for the antifreeze. When Bernice's son, Frank Warden, who was a deputy sheriff, found his mother missing, he recalled that Gein had been in the store.
That receipt led investigators directly to Gein's front door. It was the beginning of the end.
It's important to note he was a suspect in other disappearances, including a young girl and 2 hunters, but he was cleared by lie detector tests and was never charged.
His focus seemed so narrow, so fixated on these mother figures, that other types of victims didn't fit his psychological profile.
The crimes are gruesome, but they follow a twisted, consistent logic stemming from his obsession. The modus operandi was all about acquiring bodies to fulfill his delusion.
And what investigators found when they acted on that receipt? It would change the town of Plainfield and the genre of horror forever.
On the evening of November 16, 1957, based on that sales slip and Frank Warden's suspicion, police went to the Gein farm. They found Ed eating dinner at a neighbor's house and arrested him.
And then they entered the property. I can't even imagine what that was like for them.
The first discovery was in a shed. It was the body of Bernice Warden, hung upside down, decapitated, and dressed out like a deer.
Oh my God. The absolute dehumanization of it. She was just an object to him.
But the shed was nothing compared to the house. Inside, authorities found what can only be described as a house of horrors.
This is where the legend of Ed Gein was truly born.
They found bowls made from human skulls, chairs upholstered in human skin, a corset made from a female torso, and leggings made from leg skin.
He was literally creating furniture and clothing from people. It's beyond comprehension.
There was more. Masks made from female faces, a belt made from nipples, Bernice Warden's head in a sack, and Mary Hogan's skull.
And the most infamous creation, the woman's suit. A full suit, including breasts made from human skin.
Gein confessed, admitting to both murders and the grave robbings. His initial confession was ruled inadmissible because the sheriff, horrified by the scene, banged Gein's head against a wall.
That sheriff, Art Schley, was so traumatized by what he saw that he died of heart failure just a few years later. The case literally destroyed him.
Before the farm could be auctioned, it burned to the ground in 1958. It was widely suspected to be arson, as locals didn't want it becoming a macabre tourist attraction.
Can't say I blame them.
At his trial, Gein pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. He was deemed unfit to stand trial and committed to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane.
So he never faced a jury initially?
Not until 1968, 10 years later. He was then judged competent, tried for the murder of Bernice Worden, and found guilty.
But there was a second part to the verdict, right?
Yes. In the second phase of the trial, he was found legally insane at the time of the crime. So he was sent back to a mental institution, where he remained for the rest of his life.
He died of respiratory failure in 1984, at age 77. A model patient by all accounts. A quiet, helpful old man, locked away with his unimaginable secrets.
Which brings us to the ultimate question we always ask. Why? For Gein, the answer is as complex as it is disturbing, and it all comes back to Augusta.
He wasn't killing for pleasure in the way we see with other serial killers. He wasn't a sadist. He was on a mission.
His mission was to resurrect his mother. When he lost her, he lost his entire identity. So he set out to literally rebuild her, piece by piece.
But it was more than just bringing her back, wasn't it? He wanted to become her. That woman suit, he wanted to climb inside her skin.
Exactly. He told interrogators that was his goal. By wearing the skin of women, he could transform himself into his mother and finally resolve that deep psychological conflict.
He could be the woman he both loved and hated. He could finally have a complete physical union with the only person who ever mattered to him.
The grave robbing was practice. It was a way to get the materials he needed for his project without the risk of murder.
But when the graves weren't providing fresh enough materials, he escalated. He started harvesting from the living.
Mary Hogan and Bernice Worden weren't just victims. They were surrogates. They were stand-ins for Augusta, chosen because they fit the mold.
So the murders were utilitarian. They were a means to an end, the end being his delusional quest to become his mother.
It's a complete psychotic break. He was living more in his fantasy world, populated by his mother's ghost and the pieces of bodies he collected, than in reality.
It explains the squalor of the house. The real world didn't matter anymore. Only his internal project did.
The Why of Ed Gein is a terrifying study in what happens when a human being is systematically stripped of their identity, their sexuality, and their connection to the outside world.
Augusta created a monster, not through physical violence alone, but through total psychological domination. She hollowed him out, and he spent the rest of his life trying to fill that void with horrors.
He wasn't killing out of rage or a lust for power over others. He was killing to solve an impossible puzzle inside his own shattered mind.
And in doing so, he provided the blueprint for some of fiction's most terrifying killers.
The deep dive on Gein's motive is one of the clearest yet most bizarre in true crime. It's a direct line from maternal obsession to unimaginable acts.
It's a chilling reminder of how powerful and destructive a parent's influence can be.
In the end, Ed Gein's story is less about the man himself and more about the monster his mother created.
He was buried in Plainfield Cemetery, in an unmarked grave next to Augusta. Even in death, he couldn't escape her.
His gravestone was stolen so many times by souvenir hunters that it was eventually removed and placed in storage. The fascination never really went away.
And his cultural impact is immense. He is the direct inspiration for at least 3 of the most iconic horror villains of all time.
There's Norman Bates from Psycho, with the maternal obsession and dressing in his mother's clothes.
There's Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, with the mask of human skin and the house decorated with bones.
And of course, Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs, who murders women to create a woman suit for himself.
It's incredible that this one isolated case from the 1950s provided the raw material for decades of horror. The story was, as one documentary put it, bent and twisted by the media.
The real Ed Gein was a pathetic, mentally ill, and lonely man. The fictional versions are terrifying, monstrous figures of evil.
And maybe that's the final reflection. It's easier for us to process this story as fiction, as a movie monster, than to confront the sad, grotesque reality of what happened on that Wisconsin farm.
Thank you for joining us on this unsettling journey into the mind of Ed Gein.
What do you think about the power of Gein's legacy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and share.